In Fort McMurray, there's neighborhoods, like fairly recent neighborhoods, that were built under the fire smart guidelines and the development setbacks, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah.
Was there a difference, or what was the difference in performance between the neighborhoods developed with fire smart in mind and the development setbacks versus the ones without and were developed before that?
I guess you mean like as damage? Like how that worked out?
Yeah. Like in general.
Well, the older communities were really gutted.
Yeah.
The newer ones not so much. So I guess if that's an initial reaction, I mean, those setbacks and building materials were certainly helpful. And we Erin and our group, we're always talking about build back better. And I think just the fact that we're building now as opposed to building it from 1970, we're already that much better. So I think the building material and the setbacks that are there, they seem to work, and we're much more cognizant now of open-ended sides, so windows and soffits and cantilevers, especially when it comes to zero lot lines and things like that. So I think they performed well. Just from, in my opinion, I wasn't there when it was burning to see. Well, that setback seems to be working a little bit better than the other one. But just from an after effect, I think it certainly helped. And maybe you had something.
Well, I think like Parsons Creek is our newest neighborhood, and it was, the trail was set back far enough, the trees were back far enough from the houses, but that was all put into the engineering service standards, so we had the teeth to be able to do that. So you just have to make sure that when you're doing these things, you actually have them in, some kind of document, some sort of policy to be able to do that. I wasn't there during the fire either, but I believe that there was very minimal damage in the neighborhood of Parsons Creek, and I think that was a lot of reason for it. That being said, we did also go through during the fire and even cut a larger setback. So what we used to go under was the typical fire smart of it's 30 meters from the back of house out. We've now changed our engineering service standards that is actually from the property line 30 meters out. So it just gives that little bit of an extra buffer. Some of those larger backyards or whatnot that do back onto the tree line, we've just given it a little extra space to make it even better. But the fire I'm not sure it would have mattered. It jumped the river multiple times. It said it couldn't jump a river.
In that vein, and I see your question. How would you describe what resiliency means for your community?
Not dying. It's for me. For me, resiliency is really understanding what happened, and trying to understand where we could have been better, and helping to close those gaps. So whether it's zoning, whether it's floodplains, whether it's slope stability, understanding where we fell down, so that we can teach others and people can learn from us. And I said a lot in council. Listen, this is the first time I've ever done this. You have to trust me. And everybody's been going through for the first time. So this is going to sound very cliche, but just being genuine human beings. People make mistakes. We need to learn from this. We need to understand what happened and how we can close those gaps.
And we did when we did our interviews. One of the things that struck us was just what everyone said. Know the people you will deal with when a disaster hits. So. Know your neighbor, know who's in the forestry service, know who they are, know the names of them, because when a disaster hits, you don't have time to look for people. And because we were a small enough community that many knew each other just for being neighbors or friends, that was what helped this getting a little bit smoother than it would have been. So that meet other people.
Yeah, that was a really big one. Over and over we heard from our interviews was know your people, know your people. That's the RCMP. We have a really close relationship with them now. The fire department has a very close relationship with the Alberta Forestry Service. And they get together and now call each other up for prescribed burns that are outside of each other's jurisdictions. Just creating all of those relationships. Doctors, RCMP was a big one. Even the town of Slave Lake and the MD of Lesser Slave River, we were not friends. When nobody had a meeting with First Nations ever. So everybody's been brought together, and now we know when there's emergencies who we call and who's our extra shoulder to lean on. when we need help, and that was very important.
I think if I can just add to the resiliency piece is really about your community members too, and how you help them to recover and what you can do about the whole mental health side of things. Nobody wants to or accepts what, you know, Jamie's planners tell them, but once it's on a curve essentially, like you go down and multiple people go through that curve multiple times, and sometimes they're at the bottom of the curve, and then when they come up the other side they can become the champions. So it's really about how you help your community to recover, so that they can adopt these kind of things. Those champions on the other side are those people that are, you know, going in. I know one guy that we have in one of our communities, he's actually going and get the permits for all his neighbors now, so they don't have to go through that process, and he's just came at it from a whole other perspective. So I think that resiliency piece is really how you can help your community recover, and what you can put in place to be a stronger community, so that you can start implementing some of the changes that need to be implemented. So it might happen again, but you're in a much better, and your community as a whole is more resilient, as opposed to just all your policies or whatnot. You actually have the buy-in from the community to do those types of things.
You know, one of the best things that's happened to me so far was just about that resiliency. Alex, right as I was coming here, I got an invite for his housewarming party.
Yeah, me too.
He's finally finished, and he said, you know, you guys have helped me so much. You know, come on out to my housewarming party. And I'm going to be away, but you know, that never would have happened before. Like even when Alex first started coming around, he was pretty combative. And unless Erin was there, like nobody could calm him down. So then
I got yelled at a lot.
Alex would agree with me anyway. So you know, just as Erin said, let your community be your champions, and they'll see it through for you.
And oh, sorry. On that note, we did interview a pastor, and he said, don't forget about the churches, because this is a community oriented group of people who are used to helping each other. And he said, you know, they had all these people flying in from all over Canada to help with the Red Cross. We were there ready to help out. We had a place to stay, but we were never asked. So they had to do their own thing.
Our churches, they actually all got together, and not just, you know, like we had our mosque and the Alliance. They were getting together and pooling funds, and something that Red Cross didn't have is, well, they have to pay for their staff. The churches are being paid for. They have volunteers that are not they're part of their organization. So really, what he told us was, let us know what you need. We're sitting there waiting, and we have money, we have resources with people, and they put a lot of effort into the community, went above and beyond. So that was a missed resource for us.
My question was more for Jill and Ann about, you mentioned new relationships with First Nations, and I come from a probably more unusual context than most people here. I live in a small First Nations community in Northwest Territories, and before I moved there, there was an evacuation. That community wildfire got very close to the community, so I'm curious about that renewed communication. I've had elders tell me, you know, it's the government's responsibility to put out fire, which typically it is, right? When are they going to replant so that things look like they used to, similar to what you're seeing, you know? Wildfires are much different than wildfires coming into the municipality, but I wonder if those conversations are also about climate change and the cycles of fires and how they're growing and impacting our communities in different ways. I mean, what are your conversations like now?
We live in northern Alberta. I don't know if climate change is our hot topic up there.
You know, there is a perspective of taking care of nature and the knowledge that the First Nations bring to the table. About we had the Weir was made water shortage, and so we needed to get the rivers flowing. And then with the First Nations, they had knowledge about what kind of fish that spawn when, and things that they had received through generations of living there. And also with that relationship that we have, it's easier when we want to build something, instead of first plan it, spend a few $1,000s for a consultant, and then go to for consultation. It's easier to just call up, say, what do you think? and then no, we hate it, or oh yeah, that's not such a bad idea. And so you have had that. It's not a call for consultation, but at least you know a little bit more what may happen if you do it.
And I think from my one experience, Anne was with Tri-Council for a while, when we had an energy company looking to work within their lands there. It was very clear that they wanted to be notified as soon as possible, and sometimes even going through the proper channels was offensive. It was, why didn't you contact us? You felt you had to go to the province before us, or people here too. So that was what I noticed from my main
Well,
interaction.
I'm really curious. It's the Sawridge First Nation, right?
Yes.
And they're probably able to tell you the changes they've seen over many generations and the worries they have about the future too. That is fire getting closer, getting bigger? What are we all going to do about it? Because you're kind of all in it together, right?
Yeah.
You raise a great point, and we've touched on it a little bit, but let's get a little more acute on it, and that is communications. And so we've kind of talked about the enhanced communications, but in each of your experiences, there were some challenges around communications, and I think that's a pretty big understatement. A lot of that tended to be in terms of the perpetuation of misinformation, and then culminating in that, of course, in terms of the evacuation. I mean, like for us who didn't know anything, all of Fort McMurray was on fire, right? The entire place was on fire. It's terrible. There didn't seem to be a central point on the communications piece initially anyways. And I'm kind of curious in terms of, lessons learned on communications, and certainly in terms of on the external side, so that it actually touches on the media as well, right? So that the media is also kind of getting it. To certainly kind of stem the panic, but also in terms of the recovery piece. So maybe you can kind of just talk to the communications element during, and then certainly on that recovery side of it.
I'll start internally, and Erin and her group did a fantastic job externally, even internally. But I think internally, when I first got there, if I could say, be so bold, communication was almost non-existent. There was, in REOC knew what was going on, but there was a lot of overlap, people doing the same tasks that, so for example, let's say I was doing one thing, Erin could be off doing the same thing and not knowing it because the communication wasn't there. It's not that actually happened, but there was issues where I'm just standing, okay, what's going on? Like there was no communication internally to figure out what we were doing. First responders had a lot of communication on what they had to do, but I think if we had been a bit more intuitive and communicative with each other, especially about re-entry, of coming in, of what we need to do, or transitional housing, I think it would have been that much more successful for us should we had been doing that. And then, of course, once recovery was actually stood up and they took over all that communication piece, and there was a massive undertaking that they not let Erin speak to it, but it was something I've never experienced, a communication campaign of that magnitude and of that involved. I would hate to sit there and tally up the hours of the salaries that were sitting at some of these town hall meetings or review sessions, and I would start a conversation, and then about 70 minutes later I'd be finished it, and that's just one person. So I'll let Erin go on with the rest.
So I think during response, Twitter was our only option for some, even for residents who didn't know what was going on, Twitter was the only option. But then our REOC was evacuated twice, so the person running the Twitter wasn't able to tweet or provide any information, but I think that was the only way. We sent out over 13,000 tweets during that period of time, so that was the only means of doing it, and I don't know how you would have changed any of that, because everything's moving so fast. But I think if you go on to recovery, Jamie, what we did is we set up an entire campaign. It was called our Here For You sessions. So every week we had a community engagement session. Actually, I'll back up a bit. Well, we started off with provincial town halls. So the province set up town halls where they called every single person that was registered with Red Cross, and you could participate. You could answer any question. You could go online and enter a question, or you could press *3 and ask a question. And that had everybody. It had the Red Cross, it had the Insurance Bureau of Canada, it had the REOC, all the government agencies. So you could literally ask any single question, and that question was answered for you by a live person. we continued those, the municipality continued those town halls. I think there was over 70 town halls in total with all those people, and then we branded our Here For You sessions, and it was weekly sessions. We got to the point where we actually had different topics for those sessions. I will never forget September 8th for all of my life, I don't think. That was one of our first sessions with waterways. There were 150 people at that session. At that session, I was called a psychopath, a sociopath, you name it. We got berated any possible way you can imagine. And now some of those people that called me names or yelled at me, call me regularly, see me on the street, tell me how great things are going, and every single session we go to, it gets a little less worse and a little less worse. And it's really just because they saw the same faces. They knew, oh, Jamie's here, he can talk about planning. Oh, Erin's here, she can talk about recovery. And like Jamie says about Alex, for a time, I remember our first Here For You session, they're like, Erin, there's a guy over here, he's really mad. So I said, okay, well, I'll go talk to him. And he's like, wow, thanks for just giving me the information. And it came to a point that Alex finally, I was like, Alex, you can talk to Jamie about planning. Like, so you build those relationships, and those Here For You sessions were the best thing we've ever done. I think we're over 150 or 160 Here For You sessions now. And now everybody knows if there's a Here For You session in the community, it's about recovery. So it's not just the cities out there doing, an engagement session, and we're at all the events. So we have urban markets every week now, so we go to those events rather than having a specific, we're actually out in the community going to all those events, and there's a Here For You set up so that you can go and you can ask any question about recovery, and there'll be somebody there to answer your question. So it worked out. It was a really great campaign that has worked really, really well for us. And if anybody wants to see it, we Facebooked lived everything, so you can actually go and watch the videos. We took questions, so if people weren't home, so feel free to check that out, because it was probably one of the best things that our communications team put together.
I'd like to ask them individually, from that experience, what was the hardest part on you and your family during having to go through that? Because I'm very interested in the social side of it. And I mean, they interviewed the fire chief in Fort McMurray and in Kelowna, they did the same thing and stuff. But, you've had a very unusual experience, and hopefully one that you will never have to go through again. But you're human. So are there any particular stresses or things like, how did you deal with it? I'm very curious.
I guess I'm still in the thick of it, really, so I guess I'll answer first. But it comes to a point where I just walk into my boss's office and say, I'm done. I'm gonna, I'm done. I'm out. I'm off on Friday, or I'm doing this. And you have to really recognize those things. We have some really great people on our team that you just know that's the person you go to and that's the person you offload on. It's really hard. There was hours that I just was never home. Jamie jokes, he's like, I drive by and your truck's at the office, and I drive by again and your truck's at the office, and it's really hard. And I would say I get to the point that I'm like, I finally figured this out. I don't know the answers to all the questions, but I figured out this recovery thing, and the next day it just goes off the rails. And I don't think you can ever prepare for that. So it's really about having that network of people that you can, however you blow off steam. After every Here For You session, we went to this really shady pub in town because we knew there was nobody else there to hear us if we wanted to do it. And we went and had a drink, and that was what we did. There's a group of us that just, that's where we were. So it's just, you really figure out what your niche is to do it, because recovery is really hard. It's really hard, and it's not just hard on the community, it's hard on the people that are doing it.
I think for me, it certainly really teaches you what fight or flight means, for sure. I think the hardest part for me was the people. Not in a bad way, but just trying to empathize with them. And because I didn't lose my house, and they knew that, and they're very emotionally charged. You get called some things I haven't been called since I've been in the Army, and I can't repeat them because we're recording. But, helping people get through it and just being human. Erin mentioned the mental well-being as a point where we had Red Cross and psychologists in our offices when people were lining up. Because what would happen is they'd wait there for 40 minutes or so to get to a clerk and only find out they don't have what they need. Mm-hmm. And then it would literally just spiral into almost a Royal Rumble in the lobby. So we've had, once we started really being a bit more open to people and not considering ourselves regulators, but more so just friends of the community. I think that was one of the hardest things, but one of the most rewarding things too. And I think Erin can probably say that. Whether you help one person or 5 people, at the end of the day, you feel like you've earned your tax dollar type of thing. So I think that was both the hardest and the best part for me. And just as Erin said, you just didn't stop working. So like Erin would say, Jamie, just go. Like or I'd say, Erin, you've been here for 4 days, just go home. But having the strength to tap people on the shoulder and say, listen, just go. Like, you need a break. I know there's a long lineup of people, or you have to answer these questions, but there's people here to do that for you. So that was it for me, I think.
If I can just add in before you guys go, you say you hope we never have to do it again. I would do it over again tomorrow if it happened.
So
After all of it.
So we have kind of the end of that. And nobody said they would do it again on our end. Nobody. Our advice was run.
Yeah.
But they all said, when we asked, why did you stay? It was my duty, and these were my people. So yeah, there was that. And another thing that we were told by our CAO, who has put in so much hours at our office, he really took a lot for that. And Lori from the Town of Slave Lake planner, both of them said, take time off, go on vacation, do not stay at the office late, is what they said. They said your family and yourself, those are the people you need to make time for, because this is really tough. Yeah.
And another thing that we heard was for the mental health aspect, the people who did not lose their homes were often as affected, and sometimes more than the people who did lose their homes. First, they interviewed kids, and they had said they felt guilty for not, their house didn't burn down. And adults also said the same thing 5 years later, 6 years later. And so it was some of the people who were able to, let it go, it's just things, were able to recover faster than the people who had attachment to things. And then when everything burned, we heard one person say that her mother died a little bit later, and then she got some of her porcelain. And she said that was so nice to have something that was not brand new in the house.
Something that a lot of people learned from our fire was have your documents, your important documents. One of our firefighters who we interviewed, he says him and his wife have a tote in their safe that has all their important documents, their insurance, and basically it's their grab bag. For me, when I moved up there, I came in 2014, it was still very real. I was told, May, you better have more than half a tank of gas. You don't roll around with that little when it's fire season, because you'll be on the side of the road hoping somebody can pick you up. I pack a suitcase sometimes to work when it's really high fire hazard, because we're the people that stay at the office. And when I got there, people talked about how awful it was during that evacuation, and they had to come in and work and they had no underwear. Little things like that. And I scan all my insurance documents on my email at work, so it's backed up on our external server as well, which is something we did not have at the fire. And the Town of Slave Lake office burnt down with all of their files, and their backup server was on site, so it was also lost. So I think a lot has been learnt on our end for being prepared. And even though I'm not from there, and I moved in after the fire, it was made very real to me what that fire was. Yeah.
And on a mental health level, everyone talked about, there was a little bit of a high right after, because everyone got together, everyone was in it together, and they were fighting to, survive and get back on top of it again. And that's waning a little bit. Mm-hmm. That there's less of that community spirit that came right after. But awareness, I would say, is way higher, because we get fire warning, what level of hazard it is, and we get that daily or weekly depending on what season. And then we also get the information and awareness level is just much higher.
And we lost our complacency, which is what we had. all these fires made it to the edge of town and never came in, so it was fine. It was okay. It was never going to happen. And then it did happen, so we're not complacent anymore. For now. It'll probably change, but that's where we are now.